Hello everyone. Today's video is a bit different than usual. I'll be going through a few Reddit stories that I found interesting and kind of unsettling, so I hope you enjoy it and consider dropping a comment, like, and subscribe. When my cyberstalker found me. 6 years ago, I was a new mom, learning to balance my job, family, and health. My social life primarily existed on the internet at this time, and Facebook and Instagram were the main ways I kept in contact with others. I received a friend request from Steven, an old friend from high school. I accepted, and everything was normal for a while. After a couple of months, Steven sent a DM asking how I was. The conversation was fine, but it didn't take too long for me to realize that this wasn't the Steven I knew. They had the same first and common last name. His profile picture was not a picture of himself, so I never realized this was a different person. Either way, we had several mutual friends, and he didn't do anything especially creepy, so I left him on my friends list. He would occasionally message and chat, and he just seemed like someone that was a bit socially awkward but harmless. I would respond, but kept the conversations brief. One day I got a text from him, which surprised me because I never gave him my number. I asked how he got my number, and he said from my website, which was fair. I am an artist and had email and contact info on my art site. He began texting several times a day, and I would give him short responses followed with something like, "at work, talk to you later," or "dinner with the fam, have a good evening." He started talking about his new boyfriend, saying that he was one of the few gay conservatives and things were going well. I told him I'm glad he has a partner that aligns with him and wished him well. He then began talking a lot about conservative politics and was aggressive about it, and I told him I was liberal, so it was probably best we didn't have those conversations. His messages began turning sexual, where he would ask if I wanted to hear about the sex parties him and his boyfriend threw. I told him no, I didn't really know him and it was inappropriate. One day, I was busy with work and returned to my phone to see dozens of messages from him, angry that I wasn't responding, and he went on and on sharing very graphic sexual stories. I responded and told him I had been polite to him because he seemed like he didn't have any friends, but this was too much and I was blocking him. I told him that I didn't believe he was gay and he was just saying it in an attempt to make me think he's harmless. I proceeded to block him on social media and I blocked his phone number. A couple of days later, I started getting lots of friend requests from accounts that I didn't have any mutuals with and no friends. I knew they were probably fake pages that he was creating. I would block them and move on. Then I began getting phone calls and texts from fake phone numbers. Same thing, I would block them and move on. I messaged our mutuals to ask what they knew about him and none of them knew him. He had just requested them and they accepted. He began sending requests to my friends, family, and other women in my dance troupe. I let everyone know that they needed to block him. For months, not a day passed that I did not get a weird call or friend request or DM. It would range from a normal "how are you" to vague threats of "I could make you talk to me if I really wanted to." He lived several hours away, so I wasn't particularly concerned. Things got quieter until one evening my notifications started going off crazy and my phone was ringing with unknown numbers. It was on my art page. Probably 15 different accounts had posted porn on my page or things like "OP is a whore" or "OP is a thief." I knew it was him because he also accidentally posted from his real account. I didn't realize that I never blocked him from that page. He also sent a message to my art page saying sorry for that and he missed his friend and he was just trying to get my attention. I didn't respond, blocked him, and called the police. Since stalking and harassment laws are awful, they didn't do anything. Later that night, I woke up around 2 a.m. for no reason other than I was just having trouble sleeping. I was up for a while playing on my phone when I started hearing a strange sound coming from the living room. It was back and forth between quiet cracking and scratching. At the time, we lived in a large ranch house and the living room was at the other end of a long hall. I got up thinking that my cats were into something or maybe after a mouse. I flipped on the living room light and the sound stopped. I scanned around looking for my cats when I noticed an open window. Our windows were large, from floor to ceiling, and opened by pulling them down from the top. The top of the window still had pry marks and the lock was broken. Thankfully, this house is old and the windows did not open easily, and he had only been able to open it about 8 inches. I woke my husband up, got my son out of his room, and called the police. I knew it was Steven. It was too big of a coincidence that he blew up that day and then someone tries to break into my house in the middle of the night. We couldn't prove it was him. There was no evidence other than what had happened that day that pointed to him. The police spoke to him, and I believe that it scared him enough to leave me alone. I was obviously horrified at the time, and I began looking up anything I could find out about him. I wound up finding his YouTube channel, which solidified my fears even more. He posted Rush Limbaugh-style rants when he would get angrier and angrier until he was red-faced and nearly spitting. He frequently talked about violence and would show off his gun collection. This led me to finding his real last name. I googled his name and found that he had been arrested 2 years prior for holding a woman against her will in a hotel and attempted to assault her. Thankfully, she was able to escape with only a bloody lip. We moved not long later. I wanted neighbors and off the farm. I removed my phone number from my site and I locked down all of my social media. I still sleep with the baby monitor in my son's room because I'm so scared of someone coming in at night. His YouTube channel was shut down after a bit and I haven't heard from him since. So Steven, I hope you wound up in jail and let's not meet. I think someone was in my house when I was a child. This is a story I haven't told anyone except my family, but it's been bothering me for years. When I was a child, our family home was divided into 3. One for my uncle and his 2 children, another for my mother and me, and the third which stood empty after my great-grandfather died. It was a large, ugly house that had been targeted by burglars before. The first time was before I was born, the second time I was 5 and slept through it. Another time, someone drunk was walking around our garden and rearranging things. Or every day at around 3 or 4 a.m., they were standing in front of our fence and looking into the windows. When I was 7 years old, things calmed down a bit. My drunk neighbor went to jail, and with him, many of these types of incidents disappeared. I remember it was a big event because my family finally allowed themselves to have animals. A neighbor was attacking other people's animals, so we didn't have any before. We got 3 cats and a dog from a shelter. The other neighbors became calmer too, but I still felt uncomfortable. I was a nervous and fearful child, and after all these stories, I still didn't like being left alone at home. So there was an unspoken agreement that if my uncle or cousins were leaving the house for a moment, they couldn't tell me, so I didn't have to be afraid. Unfortunately, my cousin, who was 23 at the time, came to see how I was doing one day. We chatted for a while and then she told me she was going to the shop. Of course, I panicked. I didn't want to go with her, but I didn't want to stay either, so I started crying. It ended with my cousin letting me go to her room and watch cartoons. Her room was on the ground floor and had a window onto the neighbor's garden, who had a barbecue at the time. I remember she used that as another argument. If anything happens, open the window and shout to them, she said. Then she left me and I focused on the cartoons. I remember I had already watched an entire episode of Dexter's Laboratory and had switched to the channel that had the Barbie movie on when I heard some sounds. At first, I assumed it was our pets, but the next sounds were more like footsteps, doors opening, etc. My cousin came back from the shop, but I didn't even finish watching Barbie. I remember being more angry than scared at that point and decided to be quiet, so maybe it would take her a while before she threw me out of her room. But the noise was really annoying, lots of footsteps, shuffling, and some barking from our dog. At one point, the sounds were close to the room. My cousin had a door with a window back then, one of those where you can barely see anything or only shadows. So when I turned around, all I saw was a figure in a gray and black outfit. Nothing special, no bright colors. It was hard to tell if it was even a man or a woman. So I once again assumed it was my cousin and decided to stay quiet, hoping she wouldn't come in. But even I was starting to feel uncomfortable because this person was standing there and doing nothing in front of the door. Finally, the person turned right into the kitchen and I went back to watching cartoons. Only shortly after, what everybody probably expected happened, I heard our front door open and a loud "I'm back" from my cousin. This time, I also heard the sound of plastic bags. I remember suddenly being completely terrified, but before I did anything, my cousin went to the kitchen and nothing happened. No screaming, no fighting. I literally sat in a room, now with the cartoon sound turned off, listening, but it all sounded like normal unpacking of groceries. Then, my cousin came over and I started crying. I ended up telling her what happened and she called the neighbors. Together, they searched the entire house, but they found no one. Nothing looked damaged, and the next days, nothing had disappeared from our house. The rest of the family found out too. We confirmed that my uncle and mother were at work and my second cousin was at school. The day it happened, we found our cat sleeping in my great-grandfather's apartment on the second floor, but the dog was nervous and spent the entire search around the neighbors and whining. We never managed to solve it, but when I spoke with my cousin recently, she admitted that she spoke to my uncle about it a few years after the event, and together they came to the conclusion that I must have imagined something, but I'm 100% certain that I saw a person that day. Train station guy. Almost a year ago, I was at an empty outdoor train station at night waiting for my train. Although it was an eerie ambience and I was a bit cold, I didn't feel unsafe. I had a full view of both sides and could see from a big distance anyone approaching, and was hoping no one would. However, I spot two men coming to the train station. Of course, in my mind, I don't know if they are going to take the train or to do something harmful, especially as a woman. As they get closer, I get more stressed until a younger man receives a phone call and answers it with a cheerful tone in a language I don't understand and walks right past me, nodding as a way to say hi, and sits on the floor pretty far from me. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking the second man is going to follow him. However, he stops in front of me, eyeing me up and down. I ask if there's a problem in my language, although not sure if he would understand me. He does, however, and answers me in my language, saying that there is no problem. He says I'm beautiful and asks me why I'm so sad. Although annoying, at this point he just seemed like someone's dad, unaware he's making a random girl uncomfortable. I try to nod along until my train arrives, when he asks me if he could sit next to me on the train. I should have said no, but I just sort of shrugged uncomfortably. I get on the train and try to get away from both men quick, but sure enough the older man sits beside me and the younger one in front of me. It's okay, I think, I just have to get to my destination. The older man starts trying to make eye contact with me and I try to look away. He keeps telling me I'm beautiful and asking me questions about my life, which most of them I don't answer truthfully. But things started to get weird. He started telling me I could get any guy I wanted, started telling me that God wants me to be pregnant and that it's time for me to. Tells me I'm truly beautiful over and over again and that race doesn't matter since we are different races. He tries to put his arm around me and things like that happen for quite some time. He then asks me if, when we arrive, I want to go with him to some nearby village. I say no, and he keeps insisting, saying I have to be free and be happy, and I keep saying no. He then changes the subject and asks me why I'm so sad. I say I'm not, and he says yes you are. I say no, and this goes back and forth until he says that yes I'm sad, and he knows because he's a medium. He knows I just need to be free and get a man, and that if I go with him, he can help. I tell him no, and that my dad is waiting for me. He asks, "Is your dad strong?" To which I reply, "Very." He then seems to calm down for a bit, and I text my friend explaining the situation. We're talking, and then he asks me who I'm texting. I just ask why he wants to know, and he says that I should give him my socials in case I need his advice. I tell him no, and that I don't feel comfortable with that, and he insists that I should give him my number, and that he's really good at helping women. This is when my friend calls me. Salvation. We talk until I get out of the train. I walk into the parking lot and don't seem to see the guys off the train nearby. I go to hide myself somewhere to call my dad, and as I'm looking at my phone, I feel someone hug me. It was a train guy, alone for some reason. I push him off and clench my fist, ready to punch. And he tells me he just wants to say goodbye. With his weird tone, he starts getting close to me, pursing his lips. Push him off, run and call my dad. I broke into tears as soon as I was safe. I truly think that man could have done something horrible to me that day. Please, let's not meet again. My dad was out of town for months. Back when I was 12, I went to a private school, so I needed to take a long walk to my apartment since the school was a bit far from the city center. This was in Zagreb, Croatia, so I had a lot of public transport options to get home. My usual routine was to get in the bus at the station in front of my school all the way down to the main street, then take a tram to a public park and walk home the rest of the way. Our school had a double timetable where one week we went to school in the morning and the other week we had classes in the afternoon. This happened during one of my afternoon weeks. I was walking out with a few classmates since we all got on the same bus to the main street. The rest of my classmates were picked up by their parents. When we got in the bus, there were a few empty seats, so I took a seat in the front of a balding middle-aged man who was wearing slightly dirty clothes. That was my mistake. As soon as I sat down, he started staring at me, like staring with a cold look in his eyes. Feeling uncomfortable, I took a book out of my bag and started reading. I would have used my phone if I could, but it was dead since I forgot to charge it before I left the house that day. The guy did not stop staring at me the whole bus ride, to the point where I couldn't even concentrate on my book, but I refused to put it down because I was scared. I would have mentioned something to my classmates, but we were all spread out on the bus, and I was too scared to move. I don't know why, but I didn't want him to see that I was scared, thinking that maybe that would deter him, or maybe I thought he was just staring at me for some stupid reason. When we finally got to our stop, my classmates and I all got off, and some of us headed to the tram station while the others walked away to their houses. The guy who was staring at me also got off with us, and he started tailing us while keeping a fair distance. I told one of my friends about this, but urged him not to look back, thinking ignoring him would be the best option. When we got to the station, different people got on different trams, since each of them had a different route. I needed to take the tram number 2, and so did my friend. We waited for it to arrive, and the guy was somewhere to our right, but we refused to look at him. When our tram arrived, my friend and I got on, but so did the creepy guy. When I arrived at my stop, I tried to quietly discuss with my friend if getting off with me just in case was a good idea, but then we saw the guy get off himself first and started heading into the park, opposite of where I needed to go. He probably overheard us talking since there were barely any people in the tram at that time. It was around 9 p.m. But I didn't think of that, so I thought it had been all a misunderstanding. When I got off and the tram had sped away to the next station, I started walking home. It was a short distance and would have taken about 5 minutes, but then I noticed someone following me. I immediately knew it was the same guy again, so I picked up my pace and walked to my apartment. As I turned a corner into the alley that housed my apartment, the guy was getting closer. I got to the building and buzzed my mom on the intercom. I wish she would hurry up, but in the end, the guy managed to catch up with me. I could smell the stench coming off from him as he started talking. "Hey, how you been, buddy? I saw your dad yesterday and he told me about how you were getting on that new school of yours," he said. And then I immediately knew that he was lying, since my dad had been away on work-related business for months and hadn't returned home in that time once. I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there quietly staring at him. Just then, the door buzzed and unlocked, so I bolted for it. I managed to rush in and started running up the stairs, but he was following behind me, running himself. Never in my life have I felt such an adrenaline rush as I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor, and I had a backpack with books weighing me down, so I had a disadvantage. But in the end, I managed to arrive at our door where my mom was happily waiting for me. With no warning, I shoved her away from the door as I entered before slamming it shut. Fortunately, the guy had enough common sense not to continue chasing after me. I told my mom what happened, and she called the police, and they arrived sometime later, questioning me on how the guy looked and what exactly happened. In the end, they looked at the camera footage, but since it was so dark out and I didn't turn on the indoor building lights as I entered, they weren't able to get a clear view of his face. For 2 weeks, I was too scared to go home alone, so my mom picked me up every time until 2 weeks later, when on the news it was said how a man was arrested for attempted kidnapping and raping of children, and the face they showed was the exact one I saw that night. So I finally breathed a sigh of relief, knowing I was safe for now. But that didn't excuse the fact that I was careless with not charging my phone, and there's still many bad people out there. Everyone, please stay safe out there. To the person who I met, if you ever get released for some ungodly reason, I hope I never see your face again. The story of my second ex-girlfriend. This happened over the course of 11 months or so, on and off, and has to easily be the worst and longest encounter with a woman I've ever had in my life. I was on a residential trip in the UK back in July 2022, where we spent 1 week on the trip in the woods and the second week back at a community center where we're all from. I was a college student at the time and was 17 when this happened. I was in a dorm with about 5 other guys, and one day my friend group started talking to a girl because she revealed she had went to the same college as the most of us who were in the group. She liked talking to me a fair bit, and this was an early sign she liked me. The next ones included how physically close she was to me during a silent disco, and didn't realize I was moving away from her every time. Only finding out because she exclaimed afterwards, "I was trying to dance with you, but you kept moving away." This was pretty much when I put 2 and 2 together, also because she got us to dance at a campfire while waiting for other friends to arrive. She also snuck into the dorms with us once, at her request, and on reflection this behavior was actually kinda an early creepy sign, considering the dorms were split based on sex. Anyway, the end of week 2 comes, and I text her asking to go out, and she replies in nearly less than a minute to say yes, and sends me a video of her asking to voice call immediately. I turned her down because I'm a bit socially anxious. That was another sign of how strongly she liked me. Everything goes well, but on this third week of us being together, she started accusing me of ignoring a text she sent me while I was in class, because she said my Snapchat avatar appeared as if I read it for some reason. It was about her having some panic attack while I was in class and needing my help, but again, I didn't see it because I was in class at the time. As soon as I got out of class, I responded and asked if she was okay, and asked why I didn't respond, to which I said I was in class. She accused me of ignoring her, to which I said I didn't, but she wouldn't believe me, and even got one of my other friends to text me and say to respond to her messages. I tell her, the other friend, I was, and that was the end of it with her, but my girlfriend at the time wasn't convinced. She wouldn't let it go to the point we met in person in the college one day, as we could, and I tried explaining it again. This time being sure to add that I would have responded had I seen it, which as I said, I did. She was calm and laughing about it a bit, and ended it with just, respond next time. Given that we were only 3 weeks into the relationship at this point, and she clearly didn't trust me, I decided that night to try once more to explain what happened. If she didn't listen, I decided I was done. To her credit, she was calm and read through all my texts about it when I explained slowly and promised I hadn't seen her text, but still ended with the response of, "I just wish you hadn't ignored my texts." I broke up with her. I did it as calmly and gently as possible, explaining that I was still willing to be friends with her. I just didn't see us working out if she wouldn't believe me this early in the relationship because I could see the lack of trust. Her first response was, "You're breaking up with me? Are you serious?" Again, taking into account she was the one who made a big deal out of nothing. This was past the time I planned to go to bed and stayed up until midnight having to respond to what she said. I don't remember everything she said, but I can remember some included, "I guess I'll cry myself to sleep now," and "I can't believe I'm being broken up with over a text." I have a video of her text somewhere, but don't want to post it here for privacy, and because it's not something I want to relive unnecessarily. The next day at college, I walked in and she sat at the table my friends usually sat at, something she didn't normally do. As soon as I walked through the college doors and she saw me, she couldn't break eye contact. It was creepy. I managed to sit with my friends again later that day, cause frick that. But whenever she was there, she tried to argue with me, saying stuff I'd never get a better girlfriend than her, calling me a bottom, and stuff like that. I could tell she made everyone in the group uncomfortable, and apparently she even did it so much. She said this when I wasn't even with the group, enough to the point a girl I only spoke to a few times who was also on the residential had to stand up for me. Her and her boyfriend at the time also warned me about her before I broke up with her, which is another reason I did it. About a week later, she started going out with the guy from the group I was friends with, and to be honest, Everyone could tell she was just doing it to try getting back at me, even though I frankly couldn't care less, since I was just glad to finally have left her. I remember when he broke up with her like a fortnight later, sitting down at the table with him, and he just said, "Was blank as aggressive with you when you broke up with her?" To which I said, "Yeah." He shook hands with me after, revealing she had the exact same reaction with him when he broke up with her as she did me. The big climax though was one day when we were in college, and she started arguing with me when I wasn't even sitting at her table. I was with my friends. I had never insulted her once at this point, even though she'd done so to me countless times before, and I'll admit I commented on her weight as she was storming off. However, when I did this, she swung around and punched me in the side of the head. I promptly shouted at her and said cuss words. I reported this to the college, and she was given a warning. I can guarantee if I did that to her, I would have been gone immediately. I did, however, get to read her report about me. It was full of lies about me supposedly being a horrible boyfriend to her, all lies, and genuinely the worst handwriting I've ever seen in my life. Thankfully, the college believed me when I told them none of this had ever happened. She looked depressed around me from that point on, and I admittedly couldn't keep the smile off my face, which just got her more annoyed. People in a few of my classes who heard about it made jokes, but were promptly shut down when I said I bet you wouldn't be laughing if this was the other way around. I later found out that she was also trying to start trouble with other people from my friend group and was promptly kicked out for it. On top of this, in June this year, I found out that she slept with a guy at the college who was known for being an extremist during the first week we were together. As for me, I'm doing much better now. I'm in university now doing film and have a great group of friends and still keep in contact with those from my old group and have a girlfriend as of July and are much happier together than in my previous relationship. I will add though, that one funny thing that happened once was she looked at my Instagram even though she doesn't follow me with a picture of me wearing my current girlfriend's ring, seeing how happy we are together. It's not the only time she's looked at my story, even though she doesn't follow me on Instagram, which is a little creepy, but I've moved on and I'm in a much better place now. Creepy FedEx driver. I, 23 female, am a bartender. I have some crazy stories where I have been genuinely scared for my life. This has got to be the worst. I'm working a double at the restaurant. Around 11 a.m., a delivery man comes in with a package that I had to sign for. He comes, I sign for the package, and tell him to have a good day with a smile. I continue my shift as per usual. This was a Friday or Saturday, I can't remember specifically, but later on we got very busy. The restaurant and parking lot were full. I see a lot of different people daily, plus seeing someone for the second time ever out of their uniform, you may not recognize them. FedEx driver comes in and sits at the bar. I don't remember him from the 25-second interaction we had this morning. I start talking to him as I do with all my customers. I get him a drink, appetizer, another drink, entree, etc. Our conversation started, him, how long have you worked here? Me, a few years, I've worked my way up. Him, how do you like it here? Just regular conversation with a bar guest. It slowly became not so regular though. He asked me if I had a boyfriend. I said yes. He would change the subject and then go back, complimenting me, saying how beautiful I was every other minute. Can I have your number? No, I don't think my boyfriend would appreciate that. Okay, what's your last name? We could just be Facebook friends. All annoying, but normal interactions I have had with men in this industry. He started to become really pushy over time, pressing for my phone number or social media. I continued to politely decline and laugh it off. He then tells me, I actually came this morning to drop off a package with FedEx. You signed for it. I came back just for you. I smile and continue with my stupid customer service. Oh yeah, I remember you. Smile and laugh it off. I even stepped in the back to vent to my manager at this point about how he was being extra pushy and uncomfortable. Flash forward about an hour, he pays his tab and leaves. I'm just glad he's gone at this point. We'll say as a guess, it's about 7 p.m. when he leaves. We're still busy and we close at 10. We finish dinner service, customers slowly start to leave, and the restaurant is finally empty. I've been cleaning for a while and I'm finally finishing up. It's about 10:30 at this point. I'm cleaning the bar, I look up and I see the one car in the parking lot. I noticed that the delivery driver from earlier is standing outside of the car, walking around it, and seeming like he is cleaning the back seat out. Doors open, and he is leaning in and out with the bag. As soon as I realized it was him who had left almost 4 hours ago, my heart sank. Why was he still here? Why was he cleaning the back seat out? I freak out. My manager and I are the only one left in the restaurant at this point. It's almost 11. I run to her and tell her everything about how he came back just for me and about how he had seemingly left 4 hours ago. And I made her come from the back of the restaurant to behind the bar up front so she could see him in the parking lot, I don't know, waiting for me. She said she's gonna call the police. At this point, my boyfriend died, had an apartment literally 5 minutes away from the restaurant. I told her not to worry about it, I'll just call him to come get me. I did just that, but my boyfriend could immediately tell that something was wrong, and when I'm scared, I ramble. So I gave him a quick debriefing of what was going on. He said he would be there soon, and I hung up. My manager made me sit in the office until he got there, so I didn't see this go down. All I remember is my boyfriend coming into the restaurant to get me, walking me to the car through the back door, and me getting home. My boyfriend, who is very confrontational and protective, later tells me that he pulled in the parking lot to see FedEx driver sitting in the driver's seat of his car. My boyfriend walked up to his car and knocked on the window for him to roll it down. He does, and my boyfriend tells him something along the lines of, "You need to get out of here." This is where the scariest thing happens. The dude responded to him in a different language, bumbling and acting like he didn't speak English. My boyfriend said something like, "I know you speak English, you've been talking to my girlfriend all night, and you need to get out of here." Dude continued to ramble in a different language until he raised his voice and basically said, "You have 15 seconds before I pull you out of this car and you never leave this parking lot," for the guy to finally put the car in drive and speed off. I was on edge for weeks after his interaction and even considered switching jobs. Why was he still in the parking lot after close and hours after cashing out his tab? And why was he cleaning his back seat? To the creepy bar guest, let's never meet again. Thank you everyone for watching, and let me know if you'd like to see more of this content.